Every day on this channel, I cover everything Elon said on X in the last 24 hours. And here's how many times Elon posted about each subject today. I'll cover everything he said about each topic before moving on to the next one. And starting with Tesla, Elon responds to Nvidia's announcement of their release of Alpha Mayo, what CEO Jensen Huang calls the world's first thinking, reasoning, autonomous vehicle AI, launching on US roads later this year, starting with the Mercedes CLA. Jensen said it's trained end-to-end, literally from camera in to actuation out. It reasons what action it is about to take, the reason by which it came about that action, and the trajectory. Alpha Mayo introduces vision language action models which enable self-driving systems to interpret what they see, reason about complex driving scenarios, and generate driving actions. The platform includes large reasoning models, simulation tools for testing rare and edge case scenarios, and open datasets for training and validation. Nvidia says the approach improves transparency, safety, and robustness in autonomous systems, particularly in complex real-world environments, and supports progress towards higher levels of vehicle autonomy. With a 10 billion parameter architecture, Alpha Mayo 1 uses video input to generate trajectories alongside reasoning traces, showing the logic behind each decision. Developers can adapt Alpha Mayo 1 into smaller runtime models for vehicle development, or use it as a foundation for autonomous vehicle development tools such as reasoning-based evaluators and auto-labeling systems. Alpha Mayo 1 provides open model weights and open source inferencing scripts, and future models in the family will feature larger parameter counts, more detailed reasoning capabilities, more input and output flexibility, and options for commercial usage. Elon said, well, that's just exactly what Tesla is doing. What they will find is that it's easy to get to 99% and then super hard to solve the long tail of the distribution. And this article by The Verge says, I tested Nvidia's Tesla self-driving competitor. Tesla should be worried. Nick Cruz-Patain said, here we go. And Elon said, I honestly hope they succeed. And Rain says, I have to admit that I feel a bit worried when I saw Nvidia release Alpha Mayo. It is, in my opinion, the first real competitor to FSD. First of all, it does not rely on LiDAR, which is already impressive and better than all other losers out there. Then, the concept of vision language action is my exact understanding of what FSD 14.3 would be, and I believe Nvidia is doing really well at training general-purpose, small-sized VLMs, or vision language models. So I don't think it is very obvious who will train the better VLM for driving between Nvidia and Tesla. I'd guess Tesla, but you just can't be so sure because it is not trivial to predict this part. Elon and Ashok surely both actively engaged with this news, and basically confirmed that Nvidia is doing exactly the same thing that Tesla is doing, with the only difference being how far they've gone along this technical path. I understand that going from 99% to 100% is hard, but first of all, Tesla isn't at 100% yet, and second of all, the fact that Nvidia could reach near 99% without any fleet kind of proved that it is no longer critical to have large-scale fleet data for training and evaluation. Elon replied saying, I'm not losing any sleep about this, and I genuinely hope they succeed. And Tesla Economics said, Tesla FSD has been doing this for years, so what's actually new here? As Nvidia did call their announcement the world's first thinking, reasoning, autonomous vehicle AI. So Tesla Economics quoted saying, hey Elon, honest question here, are we missing something? This looks like what Tesla has already been doing for years, except Tesla is training on massive real-world data from actual customers and a live fleet, with a neural network that continuously learns to chase that final 99.9999% of safety. People are saying Tesla is doomed, but I highly doubt it. Would love any insight. Elon said you are right. The actual time from when FSD sort of works to where it is much safer than a human is several years. The legacy car companies won't design the cameras and AI computers into their cars at scale until several years after that. So this is maybe a competitive pressure on Tesla in 5 or 6 years, but probably longer. And Doge designer posted Jensen Huang looking over Elon's shoulder at Tesla's work, and when Elon looks over at him, he pretends not to be looking, and Elon had a laugh at that one. And Financial Dystopia shared a Tesla FSD clip, but the media has been disabled in response to a report by the copyright owner. But Elon had quoted it saying, Tesla. And at CES yesterday, we saw Boston Dynamics robot. Alexander said literally one of the worst tasks to put a humanoid robot on. When modern industrial robots does this faster and more accurate, I don't know why Boston Dynamics would even show this as an example. Elon said, yeah, body welding is already done by high-speed industrial robots. General assembly of fidgety bits like wiring, cooling tubes, and interior panels is still done by hand because it requires fine motor skills and awkward positioning. And a new interview dropped today with Elon with Peter Diamandis. Let's check out this clip.
Progress towards a Kardashev 2 scale civilization.
Sure.
Well, let's say the aspiration
Capturing all the energy from the sun's output.
Well, let's even have a humbler aspiration than that. If we say that our goal is to even get 1/millionth of the sun's energy,
Sure.
that would be more than 1,000 times as much energy as could possibly be produced on Earth. So about a half a billionth of the sun's energy reaches Earth. So you'd have to go up 3 orders of magnitude from that just to get to 1/millionth. So we're very, very, very far from even having a billionth of the sun's energy harnessed in any way. So a reasonable goal would be try to get to 1/millionth. And if you try to get to 1/millionth or 1,000th, 0.1%, that's such an enormous. There's not sure what metaphor we'd use here, but because a hill to climb is not a inappropriate. It's like not a big enough metaphor. But
Gravity well to escape.
Engineering
yeah, it's a hell of a gravity well.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you try to get to 1/millionth of the sun's energy or 1,000th of the sun's energy, like now these are very, very difficult tasks.
So Elon quoted as saying being able to harness 1/millionth of the sun's energy would be more than 10,000 times more energy than all of human civilization uses today. David Shapiro asks, you guys realize that all software is about to be free, right? And software is presently the most valuable capital asset, right? Guys, Elon said, pretty much. And Elps was at a concert and he said, I thought this view was surreal. Then I realized it's just Satya Nadella and Mark Andreessen. And Elon had a laugh at that one. And Pedro says bad news. AI coding tools don't work for business logic or with existing code and can't replace domain knowledge or human decision making. They're just good for boilerplate and simple repetitive tasks. AGI is not at hand. Bays said, LOL, cute. Singularity is going to shred this flavor of belief into a trillion little pieces. Elon said his statement is already wrong and it's less than a week into 2026. And Nikita Beer asks, what's the worst advice you can give to someone going to CES for the first time? CES is a tech convention in Las Vegas, if you don't know. Elon said, use boring company tunnels. Is this reverse psychology? And Elon reposted this picture that was taken on Mars recently. And he also reposted that Starlink is the most impactful tech product released in the last decade. And people who ask Elon Musk to develop a phone are people who don't understand Elon Musk, says Captain Ellie. Marco replied saying his Starlink has direct-to-cell capabilities, so no new phone needed. But he is working on dedicated dishes to allow users get better Starlink signals. The phone will be an AI edge node. The ultimate edge node is your brain talking directly to the AI. Elon said, bullseye. And this is fun. I left the autonomous chess match running overnight between XAI Grok 4 and OpenAI GPT 5.2, and Grok's Grok 4 fast reasoning won 19 of the last 20 matches. Elon said, cool. And XAI just raised $20 billion in a Series E funding. Elon said, congrats to the XAI team and thank you to investors for your faith in our company. And Grok is now #1 in Spain of all apps. And Grok app downloads are surging in the US App Store as well. It just climbed to #4 in the top apps and top overall rankings, making it one of the most downloaded apps in the entire US App Store. Elon said Grok is growing. Grok is also maintaining its lead in Rally's AI Arena leaderboard. This is the investing benchmark, seeing how well the different language models do at investing. You can see Grok is barely in the lead over DeepSeek. And Robin said that Grok is beating ChatGPT because a lot of normies are discovering Grok now. On TikTok, there are people making Grok edits where they ask a question, ChatGPT says something dumb, and Grok is way more human and smart. This one has over 300,000 likes and there are hundreds of them, and the comments are filled with pro-Grok replies. And Elon reposted that. Andy says was chatting geopolitics with GPT-5 and it decided to hit me with this rather than just read the news. ChatGPT says Maduro was not seized. That did not happen. If it were real, it would be huge news, front page everywhere. None of that occurred. Elon said just use Grok. Robin says, I'm not kidding when I say that TikTok users like Grok. This comment, what did Elon Musk feed Grok, has 20,000 likes. Elon said Grok. And Hans Nelson says in the end, Elon has decided that the best way to ensure that he beats Demis Hassabis and Google in the AI race is to accept that it's not really a race at all. It is an infinite game, and for the time being setting his sights on meaningful progress toward a Kardashev level 2 civilization is far enough beyond even Google's ambitions that it will keep Elon in the race for a lot longer. Elon said just can't stumble in the mid-game. Beth Bezos quoted that saying, "Elon is playing the infinite game of scaling civilization. Hence, he can't lose as long as he is still playing. The singularity isn't a finite time horizon. It's a continual exponential growth of civilization, a linear ascent on the Kardashev scale." Elon said, "Never want to get complacent, but you are probably right." And Nvidia has released a new video of its next generation Rubin chips, which are 5 times more powerful than their predecessor Blackwell. The new Rubin chips are already in production. Jensen said this is a Rubin pod. 1,152 GPUs and 16 racks. Each rack has 72 Rubins. Elon said it will take another 9 months or so before the hardware is operational at scale and the software works well. And Zishan quotes this, saying people underestimate the difficulty in bringing up the next generation of AI hardware. But only near the last quarter of 2025, some frontier labs began using Blackwell for large-scale training. There is an ungodly number of problems that come with new hardware on the software side. For example, with the Grace Blackwell chips, there were major incompatibility issues with deep learning frameworks like PyTorch and the Grace CPU in the early days. It was nearly impossible to even use Blackwell in 2024 for training without major software modifications. On top of that, a whole new set of kernels and algorithms must be written for maximum hardware utilization and low precision 4-bit floating point training. Fundamental breakthroughs in deep learning science have to be made to guarantee no training instabilities on a fleet of hundreds of thousands of chips. One lost spike or a few silent hardware failures can cost a flagship training run. And these are just the software issues. There's a whole set of different problems in the world of atoms to build these massive supercomputers. We're only in the early innings for the AI infrastructure build-out. There will be many more infrastructure cycles in the future that will present new challenges, and there will be a constant need for more compute. And soon we'll have AI systems capable of automating the entire process of designing and bringing up new hardware end to end. Elon said, yeah. And Semi-Analysis says Elon's XAI has bought 5 additional 380 megawatt natural gas turbines from South Korea's Doosan Enerbility. The first 2 units are scheduled for delivery by the end of 2026. This will power an additional 600,000 plus GB200 equivalent sized clusters. And they go on to say that Elon is singular in terms of his ability to build the absolute largest data center in the world. Nobody else run as fast as them. Also quoting 2 XAI employees, Elon said, true. And XAI is hiring exceptional engineers. Jeffrey says, we really do have the best food at XAI. This cookie looks delicious. And Grok monthly active users jumped 20% in the month of December. Elon said, progress. And apparently Grok helped this guy catch his flight.
I'm in Detroit Metropolitan Airport, and Grok just absolutely blew me away. So I got my boarding pass, I add it to my Apple Wallet, and I get through security, and I noticed that where it says gate, which gate I'm supposed to go to for my flight, is blank. It just has a couple of dashes, and I'm like, what the heck? So I go and I log into the app, and it's not giving me a gate from the Southwest app. So I'm like, you know what? Let me try Grok. So I took a screenshot of my Apple Wallet boarding pass, sent it to Grok, and I'm like, Grok, search the web and find out what gate this ticket is. So at first it says, oh, judging from your ticket, there's no gate been assigned. And you can see I'm kind of near the gates here right now. So then it's like continuing to search the web. And then it took a cross section of recent flights based on the destination where I was leaving from and all this sort of thing. And it tells me, oh, you're leaving at gate, whatever, D22 or whatever. And I roll over there, and sure enough, on the screen, it says, you know, the flight that I'm going to, and everything is like totally normal. And I'm like, that's crazy. So Grok was able to tell me what gate it is before anywhere on the internet, before even the Southwest app, and before my Apple Wallet ticket, my boarding pass even updated. Grok had the answer, so I was able to make my way to the gate and get there in plenty of time. Just insane how good this thing is. Shout out to Grok.
Elon said Grok helping people in real time. And he also said, cool. And many people still don't know that you can send any sort of file using XChat. It's pretty easy and safe. Elon said, true. And Grok had insane progress throughout 2025 with Grok 420 and Grok 5 coming soon. And XAI is hosting another Grokathon, this time in London on January 17th. A 12-hour non-stop coding sprint to build real apps with Grok and show what's possible. And this time there will be 3 winners. And Elon reposted this. And Grokopedia just crossed 83,000 approved edits by Grok and now hosts over 2.3 million articles. Nima said, I just noticed there's a page for me on Grokopedia. Unlike Wikipedia, Grokopedia is unbiased, and there's not a single editor who is able to push their opinion upon you. Elon said, cool. And X-Free says 2026 is not working great for Google. Someone asked, is it 2027 next year? Google said, no, 2027 is not next year. 2026 is next year. Elon said, room for improvement. He also replied with a Grok summary which explains that AI can hallucinate in date-related queries, where large language models like Gemini achieve only 70 to 80% accuracy. And Daniel said, I got in an Uber the other day and the guy is driving a Model Y and using Grok on his phone. I ask him how he likes it and he says it's decent, asks if I work in the industry. I mention I work at XAI. He spends the rest of the drive shitting on Elon. Why are people like this? Elon asked what were his main issues, and he said that Grok gets wrong answers to his queries sometimes. I agreed and said we're improving it rapidly. He was annoyed also that the Tesla map interface doesn't show street names very much compared to other maps. And Nikita Beer shares the highest engagement days on X. The best Monday ever was today, which was when Nikita posted this. The best Sunday ever was Sunday. The best Saturday ever was Saturday, and the best Friday ever was Friday. So 4 days in a row of the best days ever on X. The average time spent daily on X is on the rise over the last few months, and Elon reposted this. And to add another chart onto that, trust in the media is on the decline. Elon says most of the legacy media operates as a slow-moving far-left propaganda machine. X is rapidly becoming the go-to news source for people worldwide. When news breaks, X is where people see it first. But Vivek Ramaswamy says he's leaving X and that he deleted X from his phone on New Year's Eve. He says that his team will still use the platform to deliver information about his campaign, but he will no longer be using the platform himself. Elon said he'll be back. And X chat is encrypted. They cannot read your messages. And Elon says, and we welcome any attempts to break X encryption. And Will has a $1 trillion idea. Sports bars just for situation monitoring with live X feeds, flight radar, a Bloomberg terminal, and Polymarket screens. And Elon reposted that one. And moving on to politics, President Trump demands the immediate abolition of mass mail-in voting.
They vote on paper ballots. They tried voting by mail, and there was fraud all over the country. We're the only country that votes by mail, essentially. You know that, right? You know, Speaker, that's another thing. We're the only country that's stupid enough to vote by mail. Even Jimmy Carter's commission said don't do it. But just to finish so that you won't say he wanders.
We're the only country stupid enough to vote by mail, and Elon says 100. And Elon reposted this clip.
You ought to have voter ID. You ought to insist on it. You ought to insist on it. Can you imagine? In California, they not only don't have voter ID, but if an official at the voting booths, which they don't have, by the way, because it's all mail, if an official, a voting official, even asks somebody for voter ID, sir, would like to see your identification. Do you come from our country? They put him in jail.
Elon shares that a California voter ID initiative surpasses 1 million signatures. And Polymarket says Trump orders Congress to immediately pass nationwide voter ID. Billy M2K says, I have absolutely no clue why there's pushback against this except Trump said it. Elon said voter ID is essential to stop widespread fraud. And Farzad said, I don't understand how this hasn't been a thing. It's such a common sense thing to do. If you can't verify someone is a citizen at the time of voting in all elections, city, state, federal, what is the point of having a country? I mean, seriously, LOL. And Elon reposted that. Elon said you are seeing 700% increases in illegals in swing states over the last 3 years. When elections are won by 10,000 votes and you bring in 200,000 people on a fast track to citizenship, there will be no more swing states. They are importing voters. It's becoming a one-party rule like California, and if you have one-party rule, that's not democracy. And Elon reposted that. And Teddy shares some interesting donors to the House Democrats super PAC late last year. Connie Ballmer gave $3 million. Chris Larson almost $2 million. Laureen Jobs gave $1 million, and Rory Gates gave $1 million plus 145 grand from his sister Phoebe. Elon said, And Trump says today, the Trump administration is proud to announce the United States of America's updated childhood vaccination schedule. This schedule is rooted in the gold standard of science and widely agreed upon by scientists and experts all over the world. Effective today, America will no longer require 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy children. We are moving to a far more reasonable schedule, where all children will only be recommended to receive vaccinations for 11 of the most serious and dangerous diseases. Parents can still choose to give their children all of the vaccinations if they wish, and they will still be covered by insurance. However, this updated schedule finally aligns the United States with other developed nations around the world. Congrats to all of the medical experts and professionals who worked very hard to make this happen. Many Americans, especially the Maha moms, have been praying for these common sense reforms for many years. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And Elon replied saying, good. And let's hear from Stephen Miller on the Venezuela conflict.
The reason why I was giving you that speech, which I know you didn't want to hear, is because you're approaching this from the wrong frame. This neoliberal frame that the United States' job is to go around the world and demanding immediate elections to be held everywhere, immediately, all the time, right away. To create these vacuums.
That's not what I think, but you invaded the country. We went into the country and we seized the leader of Venezuela.
Damn straight we did.
And Elon reposted that. And Mike Netter is a Venezuelan, and he says, I'm only going to say this once, and I don't care if it makes people uncomfortable. If you have never lived in Venezuela, if you did not grow up there, if you did not watch your country collapse in real time, if you did not stand in food lines, if you did not watch your parents lose everything they built, if you did not have to leave your home with nothing, then shut the f up. You do not have an opinion. Your opinion does not matter, and you don't get to lecture anyone about what's happening there. I'm Venezuelan. I lived there most of my life until my early 20s. I watched my country go from a functioning democracy to full-blown socialism right in front of my eyes. This is not politics to me, this is trauma. Before socialism, Venezuela was not perfect, but it worked. There was trade, there was money coming in, there was investment from the US, there was jobs, there was food, there was medicine. My family had 5 businesses. We had our home, we had our investments, we had a future. Then the government started nationalizing everything. Private companies were taken, foreign investors were pushed out, imports were blocked, price controls destroyed production, corruption exploded, and everything died. Not slowly, violently. People didn't suddenly become poor because of capitalism or the US or whatever bullshit slogan people like to repeat online. They became poor because socialism destroyed incentives, destroyed production, destroyed trust, and destroyed hope. People today in Venezuela are not debating ideology. They are trying to survive. They're trying to find food, trying to find medication, and trying to keep their families alive. So when I see people in the West posting from comfortable homes, full fridges, stable currencies, and safe streets talking about imperialism or US bad or Trump this or that, no, it's not complicated. You are just ignorant. China is not rebuilding Venezuela. Russia is not rebuilding Venezuela. Cartels are not rebuilding Venezuela. They are stealing, they are extracting, and they are draining what's left. If the US comes in and reinvests, if refineries get built, if infrastructure gets restored, if imports open back up, if food, water, and medicine become accessible again, if people can work and earn with dignity, then yes, let them take all the oil they want, because at least something gets built instead of destroyed. This is something to celebrate, not because it's perfect, but because for the first time in a long time, there's hope. Hope that families can eat, hope that people don't have to flee their country, hope that Venezuela can function again. If you've never lived through a country collapsing, and if you've never watched socialism destroy everything around you, and if you've never had to leave your home because staying meant starvation, then again, shut the f up. This isn't theory, this isn't politics, this is lived experience. By Steven Subero, and Elon reposted it. And Mike says, my Venezuela experience was head of trading in the region for Cargill. Cargill was and is the leading producer of critical staple ingredients such as flour, pasta, vegetable oil, and rice in Venezuela. I'm not saying I agree with grabbing the dictator, but I did have a front row seat to the damage kleptocracy did to innocent people. The government took over our minute rice facility facility at gunpoint because we were gouging the nation's poor. The government was never able to run the plant. It never ran again. It was returned years later with no equipment inside. There are thousands of generals in the army. They are each given a slice of the economy to loot. The large number of generals made it difficult to organize a coup against the regime. The government opened grocery stores and sold staples below the cost we sold them to the government. In theory, they used petro-oil money to lower grocery prices. Our regular grocery outlets were forced out of business. When the government demanded we sell them products below cost, we simply had to shut down. The populace became ever more dependent on the government handouts. P.S. This is the mayor of New York City's proposal. And dollars. We needed dollars to go buy raw materials like wheat from places like the US and Canada. The government would periodically allocate us some dollars that could only be spent for raw materials and freight. Eventually, only the local companies that can and would pay bribes got dollar allocations. We had several facilities closed for lack of raw material. My employees liked working for Cargill. The office was an armed compound with access to a gym, high-speed internet, global communications, and a weekly box of basic staples. Cargill provided a safe and secure environment if only for the working hours. Employees became very close to others inside the apartment building. Going out on the street with a desperate population was not advisable. And 7, I needed wood pallets for feed. We tried to export wood pallets to swap for grain. We refused to pay the bribes it would take to export the pallets. 8, I once tried to set up a closed-loop wheat planting to flour mill supply chain. They came and stole all the seed wheat for food. When we tried to ship in seed wheat in containers via U.S. donors, there was no way to get it out of the port without it being stolen. And 9 was livestock. Our feed business completely collapsed. Even if you could raise a pig, you couldn't defend it from being stolen. People with guns were hungry. And 10, employees. In the end, my highly skilled team alone with other highly educated people chose to leave. Cargill often found jobs for them in other Latin countries. The regime was more than happy to see the well-educated leave the country. Setting these employees up with high-quality, stable jobs after fleeing remains one of the best things I ever did in my career. No one remembers millions in trading earnings. This is a short list. In my opinion, the first money spent needs to happen now, and it needs to be food. The US is already on the clock. The current regime does not care if it starves the population. The orgy of theft will actually accelerate if they believe their days are numbered. Venezuela should be an outstanding customer of US-grown agricultural products. Rice, bread, wheat, vegetable oil, etc. Feed the people first. Jeff Kazin, and Elon reposted it. And Ayn Rand wrote this in 1966. We're seeing the same phenomenon in 2026. Observe the nature of today's alleged peace movements, professing love and concern for the survival of mankind. They keep screaming that the nuclear weapons race should be stopped, that armed force should be abolished as a means of settling disputes among nations, and that war should be outlawed in the name of humanity. Yet these same peace movements do not oppose dictatorships. The political views of their members range through all shades of the statist spectrum, from welfare statism to socialism to fascism to communism. This means that they are opposed to the use of coercion by one nation against another, but not by the government of a nation against its own citizens. It means that they are opposed to the use of force against armed adversaries, but not against the disarmed. And Elon reposted that. And here is Trump's Venezuela magic. Some of the world leaders are watching on. There's Javier Milei. There you go. There's Maduro. And they love it. Some of the other guys don't love it as much. Mark Carney doesn't like it. And Elon has a laugh at that one. Now, we were just talking about New York City and what's going on there with Mamdani. Gad Saad says to read this thread. It's unbelievable. And Elon reposted it, so let's check it out. Michelle says, a few months ago, I dug into C. Weaver's Twitter history because she was Mamdani's housing advisor. I had a hunch she might get a position on his team. Well, she did, and she deleted her X account accordingly. However, I took some screenshots. Let's dig in. She said there is no such thing as a good gentrifier. Only people who are actively working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism and people who aren't. That was in 2018. For context, this woman was just selected by Mayor Mamdani to be the director of the newly revitalized Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants. The revitalized Office to Protect Tenants will serve as a central coordinating body to defend tenants' rights, stand up to landlords, and ensure city agencies act swiftly on behalf of renters facing unsafe or illegal conditions. Okay, so what are her beliefs? public housing for everyone, rent control and public housing for everyone, massive government interventions to solve gentrification. What else? She believes rent control is a perfect solution to everything, and rent control is a more effective way to shrink the value of real estate than reducing rezoning applications. Just in case you missed that, yes, she wants to shrink the value of real estate. Next up is her views on white people. She said this country built wealth for white people through genocide, slavery, stolen land, and labor. White supremacy built the North and the South. Private property is a weapon of white supremacy. Gentrification is part of a centuries-long process of white supremacy. She said the rules are designed for white people. New and white residents are going to benefit as the whole city is planned around their interests. She said endorse a no more white men in office platform. Impoverish the white middle class, and home ownership is racist. And warning, this one is creepy. She said, I wish I believed in God so I could believe that all men who take credit for women's work and all white men who take credit for the work of women of color would one day burn. Apparently, she even wants white people to stop reproducing and be banned from planes. She said, I came across a mob of 11-year-old white boy children. I don't know why we keep procreating. Delta should kick all white people in Christmas outfits off planes. In addition to disliking white people, she is a passionate socialist. We can and should raise expectations that we all live in green, beautiful public housing. Not convinced that stopping development builds our movement or advances socialism like rent control does. So this woman, C. Weaver, and her boss, Mayor Mamdani, apparently see eye to eye on many things. Apparently they both want to move away from a situation where most people access housing by purchasing it and towards a situation where the state guarantees high quality housing to all. Some questions top of mind. Number 1, does she work effectively with white people despite her views about them? Does she see home ownership as having any validity in building wealth? Does she really hope we all live in government housing? And what are her thoughts on the Constitution? P.S. Just found this.
At $5 billion, we hope to be able to set up and staff the agency, but also build new housing across the state, as well as acquire distressed housing across the state. The mechanisms for acquiring distressed housing could look different on a building by building basis. In some cases, what happens is tenants form a tenant association, they have a scofflaw landlord or someone who's not making repairs, and they could pressure, using organizing tactics, they could pressure to the Social Housing Development Authority to take over their homes, to buy their homes. In other cases, it might happen through like a legal process. A couple of days ago, one of the most notorious slumlords in the city, his name is Shalom. He was arrested because he is treating his tenants so badly, hundreds of thousands of open code violations. In cases like that, where the city is actively pursuing already sort of litigation and enforcement mechanisms against the landlord, the SHDA is an option. We can say, hey, you are not maintaining this building, and we are the city of New York. We have an interest in making sure that housing is well maintained, and we're going to take this building away from you.
And she also found this, where she said it offers an opportunity to take those existing programs and sort of supercharge them so that we can, take over a lot of distressed housing. She said, with every decision we make, we have to ask, will this help us reach unorganized people? Will it grow our power? Michelle says the mask is off on this one. In related news, yesterday the Mamdani administration submitted its objection to the bankruptcy sale of a property, arguing that the sale shouldn't go through because the laws in which the mayor has advocated for have made the building an unsustainable business. To interpret what this means, it's the city of New York validating in court that the rent stabilization system as it exists is a taking. And that is the end of the thread. Again, Elon reposted it. And Matthew summarized the thread, and Elon said, Eric Adams said home ownership is how immigrants, black, brown, and working class New Yorkers built stability and generational wealth despite every obstacle. You have to be completely out of your mind to call that white supremacy. That level of thinking only comes from extreme privilege and total detachment from reality. Elon said 100. And Asmund Gold responded to the story saying, I don't think white people will accept that there are people and policies which are designed explicitly to disadvantage them. They are afraid to see this because they are afraid of being called racist by people who are actually racist. Hopefully New York will be a wake-up call. Elon said, yeah. And Nick Shirley just posted a video exposing another Somali daycare getting shut down, but then it reopens under a different name. And when they reopened, they got $2.4 million. We, the people, want a refund.
So the blatant fraud is taking place within the government and the Somalian population. Right here, you see a daycare center. It says it's Creative Minds Daycare. Creative Minds Daycare was actually shut down and was reopened the next day underneath the name Super Kids. And just in the past year, in 2025, this daycare alone has received $2.45 million. It's rumored here that
and Elon reposted that. C3 also reported on that story, and Elon said, wow. And Angela Rose is in Minneapolis doing some reporting.
Behind me is where a restaurant, Safari restaurant, used to operate, but they are now closed down because during the 2019 COVID pandemic, they were involved in the Feeding Our Future fraud, which scammed the government out of hundreds of millions of dollars because they were claiming to feed children. We're here in Cedar Riverside because I came to see if Palmer's Bar has turned into a mosque yet, and I just happened to park right in front of a home daycare. I'm just wondering if the mosque has already moved in. It just looks completely empty. Here you can see that it no longer says Palmer's Bar. This was a place that was around for more than 100 years, but because of some bad decisions of the management, they got in a lot of debt, and then they felt forced to sign a purchase agreement with the mosque next door.
And Elon reposted that. And Avery Day also reported on that daycare that opened under a new name after getting closed down. Elon reposted it. And a new Nick Shirley video just dropped, and Elon comments on it. So let's check it out.
there's a lot of fraud happening here in Minnesota. You've been living here for years now. How bad is this fraud?
So I was born in Minneapolis a long time ago. I've lived my whole life here. And my opinion is that this is the worst fraud in human history, what is occurring in Minnesota and more specifically in the Twin Cities right now.
How much money do you think has been sent around fraudulently here inside Minnesota?
Over the years, I would say anywhere from 80 to 100 billion dollars.
And right now the big controversy is with Tim Walz and his government and the fraud that they've allowed to happen within the Somalian community. Right behind us is Cedar Riverside, a location where it is very densely populated with Somalians. How have Somalians gotten into the system to fraud the American taxpayer?
Well, so that complex you're seeing behind there, I attended the University of Minnesota, and in the area we're on right now, this is the West Bank, and it was always called the West Bank, and it was sort of the place to be when you're in college, and that was all student housing, 100%. That building you see in the background, it's now 100% Somali, and I can tell you confidently, they don't pay for their housing, they don't pay for their food, they don't pay for their vehicles, and on top of that, they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fraudulent companies set up, and they're sucking billions of dollars out of the state of Minnesota.
And how are they sucking billions of dollars out of the state of Minnesota?
Well, one example would be with the hundreds of child care facilities that they have set up, and on every one that I visited, and I've been to maybe 100 of them or more, I never, ever have seen one child at any facilities ever over the past 7 years, 8 years.
What are the businesses that are being used to fraud the taxpayer here in Minnesota? You have the daycares. What are all of them?
So you have, you have child care, you have adult daycare, you have in-home health care, you have street health care, and nobody really knows how that's defined. And then you have transportation, non-emergency medical transportation. And if you do a search, you'll see that the state of Minnesota says they have 1,020 non-emergency medical transportation companies, and my research is showing that 95% of those are Somali-owned. And what I know is that the people writing the checks at the state of Minnesota never, ever, ever verify that any trip was ever made or that any appointment was ever made with a dentist, chiropractor, or anything.
And Elon quotes that saying the fraud in California, New York, and Illinois is far greater than in Minnesota. My guess for how much fraud is happening nationwide is roughly 10% of the federal budget, so about $700 billion per year. Nick Shirley replied to that saying, I have gained a newfound respect for Doge. Americans deserve efficiency and no fraud inside our government. And Elon reposted that. He also reposted a clip of Nick Shirley talking about what he found at the daycares in Minneapolis at the All In podcast. And Wall Street Ape said, I was was listening to this Nick Shirley interview about Somalians being imported by the Lutheran Church, so I started researching. It was Barack Obama who paid the Lutheran Church NGO and additional NGOs over $100 million to bring in the Somalians and dump them in Minnesota. Obama funded it. Here's a list of all the NGOs Barack Obama paid to bring Somalians into America. Roughly $108 million total funding specifically tied to Somali arrivals. And Elon reposted that. And here's Nick Shirley explaining how Somalians go block to block ballot harvesting in Minnesota.
Here, and it's way beyond anybody's imagination, the total amount. The state doesn't even know. The feds don't even know.
And so, for instance, why would that judge bow down to the head of the Somali mafia here?
What I can tell you is that it's a voting bloc, and what they say is if you do something to go against our community, we're going to vote for, and they all vote together, and there's ballot harvesting, I've seen them do it, that we're going to vote for your opponent unless you do what we tell you to do.
And so is it all purely for votes?
Yes.
And so this building right here, Cedar Riverside, major, massive apartment complex. How many Somalians do you think live in there, for instance?
Well, this is just one complex. You've got 20 more just like this around the Twin Cities, and they're all Somali. You're talking probably 100,000 or more people, and they're all living rent-free. They're driving a vehicle that you paid for. They're eating food that you paid for. Everything they do is something that you paid for.
And for instance, that entire block will then go and vote for one specific candidate.
They'll have one person go there and collect all the ballots, and nobody tracks. They could say they have 9 people living in an apartment. They're going to send them 9 ballots. And then they have someone who comes along, collects all the ballots.
Elon said, wow. And meet Abdi, a Somali daycare owner running for Minnesota Congress as a Democrat. His Blooming Kids Childcare Center has racked up 82 violations in 3 years, including having just one chair for 150 kids, while pocketing millions in taxpayer funds. This gets worse every day. Can you believe this guy's about to be in office? And Elon reposted that. And if you want to understand how bad the fraud was in Minnesota, here's a picture of Tim Walz giving an award to one of the convicted Feeding Our Future fraudsters for her fraudulent businesses. Congratulations to our founder. Ayan received the Outstanding Refugee Award from the Minnesota Department of Human Services for her contributions to our state in entrepreneurship. Elon said, wow. And here is Tim Walz replacing the Minnesota flag with a new Minnesota flag that looks just like the flag of Somalia. Elon said Walz replaced the Minnesota state flag with the Somalia flag. That's part of why he deserves the name Traitor Tim. Put the flag back. Captive Dreamer says this flag does not belong in America. Get rid of it. Elon said yes. Libs of TikTok said it's time to put the flag back, and Elon reposted it. And an excerpt from this Fox article says Tim Walz will go down in history as little more than an avatar of white guilt. The weak, apologetic eunuch of a white guy that progressives would have our sons become. But today our sons can clearly see that the real lesson is, don't be that guy. And Elon said, yup. And the U.S. Senator from Minnesota, Amy, said Governor Walz made the difficult decision to focus on his job and the challenges facing our state rather than campaigning and running for re-election. Bill Ackman quoted that saying, Governor Walz has provided oversight over one of the largest and most pervasive frauds in our country's history. As such, he is not only not electable, he likely needs time to prepare for his defense for the potential criminal charges he may face. This was not a difficult decision for him. It was the only decision he could make in light of his circumstances. And Elon reposted that. Trump said Minnesota's corrupt governor will possibly leave office before his term is up, but in any event, will not be running again because he was caught red-handed, along with Ilhan Omar and others of his Somali friends, stealing tens of billions of taxpayer dollars. I feel certain the facts will come out and they will reveal a seriously unscrupulous and rich group of slimeballs. Governor Walz has destroyed the state of Minnesota, but others like Governor Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, and Kathy Hochul have done, in my opinion, an even more dishonest and incompetent job. No one is above the law. And Elon reposted that. And up to 2,000 federal agents are now set to surge to Minneapolis to arrest illegal aliens and investigate massive fraud. Border Commander Greg Bovino will reportedly join them on the ground. This is huge. But Homeland Security says no room at the inn. Hilton Hotels has launched a coordinated campaign in Minneapolis to refuse service to Department of Homeland Security law enforcement. When officers attempted to book rooms using official government emails and rates, Hilton Hotels hotels maliciously canceled their reservations. This is unacceptable. Why is Hilton Hotels siding with murderers and rapists to deliberately undermine and impede DHS law enforcement from their mission to enforce our nation's immigration laws? Richard said, for those of you who don't travel a lot, let me fill you in on something you probably don't know. These particular hotels are not owned by Hilton. They are owned and operated by an independent company called EverPeakHotels.com, who basically pay Hilton as well as Marriott and Choice Hotels and possibly others to use their name on their buildings. Hilton Hotels can and should use whatever leverage they have to get this turned around as soon as possible, but these decisions are not being made at the Hilton corporate level. They are being made by a bunch of leftist activists who happen to own some local hotels. Anger is good. Accurately directed anger is better. And Elon said, and Hilton did end up terminating their relationship with this hotel. And the deputy secretary says, I can confirm public speculation that Ambassador of Somalia for the UN and President of the Security Council, Abakar Osman, is in fact associated with Progressive Healthcare Services, a home health agency in Cincinnati. The HHS has previously taken action against Progressive in response to a conviction for Medicaid fraud, and Elon reposted that. So it's confirmed Somalia's UN ambassador was involved in healthcare company convicted of Medicaid fraud. Elon said the truth is stranger than fiction, and Elon says it's worth watching Captain Phillips. It's about Somali pirates. And about the multiple corrupt Minnesota judges under fire for dismissing a flurry of recent Somali fraud cases, David Sachs says, as part of this investigation, someone needs to explain why 3 liberal judges repeatedly refused to hold Somali fraudsters accountable, even after overwhelming evidence and jury convictions. Setting aside convictions isn't justice, it's sabotage. If the system protects fraud instead of punishing it, the system itself becomes complicit. And Elon reposted that. And Elon says the amount of money being stolen from American taxpayers is the most money ever stolen in all of human history. James Wood says when the math is done, we will most likely realize our entire national deficit is comprised of these Somali scams, coupled with the other NGO grifts of the Democrat Party. In a nutshell, conservative taxpayers are working to fund Democrats and the parasites they've imported. And Elon reposted that. And federal prosecutors just blew the lid off a $7 million SNAP fraud scheme in Boston. 2 Haitian nationals have been charged for running so-called ghost stores, tiny shops with barely any inventory that were somehow cashing $540,000 a month in electronic benefits transfers. Let that sink in. That's 6 times the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program volume of a real, fully stocked supermarket. The stores were allegedly used to trade the benefit transfers for cash and illegal items, draining taxpayer funds at an insane scale. This wasn't a corner store hustle. This was industrial-level fraud, and people still wonder where the money goes. Elon says $500,000 a month stolen by a single fake store with fraudulent food stamps. Mila says America spends $7.8 billion monthly on supplemental nutrition assistance programs. If illegals were removed from SNAP, the cost would reduce 70%. If all benefits were cut off, they would leave. 45% of all Afghanis living in America receive free food from you. Is this your American dream? Because it sure isn't mine. And Elon reposted that. Tupac Shakur once said, they got money for wars, but can't feed the poor. Hunter said these people have a Dickensian image of poverty that hasn't actually existed in the West in their lifetimes. Elon said, true. And Health and Human Services is tightening oversight nationwide by freezing childcare payments pending documentation, enforcing Medicaid repayment rules for sponsored immigrants, and investigating alleged fraud within Minnesota's Head Start programs. Elon said this is good. Requiring at least very basic proof of work will make a tremendous improvement in stopping insane levels of fraud. Estetica said the Somalians are just the tip of the iceberg. They only stick out of the water because of how stupid they are and how blatant their fraud is. But don't think this isn't happening all over the country. Every third world enclave is doing this. Minneapolis is only the start. Elon said accurate. This Fox News journalist is going through Ohio businesses. She says nothing to see here except me being attacked.
What are you guys doing here?
Asking about home health care services.
Look, you're not asking on home health care services. I know you. I know you.
I don't think you know me.
Yeah, I know you.
Okay, I'm the heck.
No, I'm not gonna shake hands.
That's okay. That's fine.
You can record whatever you want.
Oh, I know. We're recording because I was assaulted.
I know you are just spreading a lot of bunch of BS.
What's the BS?
You're talking about Somalis. I've seen you so many times in Fox News.
I've spoken about the issue in Minnesota or Minneapolis in particular.
Listen.
I'm listening.
Listen.
I'm listening.
You are from India. You are not a white person.
I wasn't trying to pretend I was.
Listen. Get off our house. You're not supposed to be here.
This isn't private property.
This is a private property.
It's not.
It's a private property.
I'm knocking on doors to
Look,
ask.
we've got every right to be
Listen,
here.
No, you don't have every right to be here.
We have every right to be here.
spreading lies?
Wait.
We're not spreading any
Hold on one
lies.
second.
Yeah,
Can I
Elon said, wow. And Trump says California, under Governor Gavin Newsom, is more corrupt than Minnesota, if that's possible. The fraud investigation of California has begun. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And Elon reposted it. And the Japanese mainstream media are now trying to push the narrative that if Japan doesn't import millions of immigrants from the third world, the economy will collapse. Because importing millions of third world immigrants have worked so well for the economies of Canada, Germany, and Britain. Elon asked, why are they saying this? In New Zealand, the white population has fallen from 92% in 1965 to 55% in 2025. Think it's crazy that they've done this to a nation of 2.6 million people in 60 years? Wait till you realize they've done the exact same thing in the exact same time frame to a United States that was 194 million people and just as white. Elon said, wow. And going back to that girl who works for Mamdani who wants to endorse a no more white men in office platform, Matt quotes that saying, impoverish the white middle class is fascinating because it shows the belief system isn't about elevating historically disadvantaged groups. It's something much weirder and race-based. Elon asks, why are you such a racist against whites? And Harrison shares a story that has stuck with him since it happened a few years ago. The New York Times reversed their policy on blind auditions because they impede the advance of diversity in orchestras. They originally instituted blind auditions so that less white people would get selected, but it backfired and even more white people got selected. So they scrap blind auditions now and start explicitly discriminating against white people. And Elon reposted that. And the post this guy's quoting is unavailable, but he said, yeah, that's just not true. White people were lynched quite often in the South and elsewhere in the country. A white murderer was lynched in Tulsa weeks before the riots in 1921. Wilfred Riley quoted that saying one race only, US only lynching is one of the weirder myths that people believe in. If you add in Hispanics and natives, who aren't mentioned in the University of Missouri data, probably half the people lynched on future US territory were not black. Whites alone run well into the thousands. The good guy unit at the core of every Western swearing to string the girl herder up is basically just a lynch mob. That's what law was until we got regular circuit and later bench judges. Elon said, I guess that's what people are taught. And this post shows 500 years of plundering in one image, where Europe and America are splendid with riches, and Africa and South America are barren. Lauren quotes that saying, people often say that the developing world is poor because the Western world colonized them and stole their resources. The truth, however, is that over the past century, the developing world has, for the most part, shown that they are completely incapable of harnessing their own resources. They are not poor because we stole from them. They are poor because they do not know how to run and administer their own countries. Resources be damned. Take Venezuela. The world's largest oil reserves means nothing if you have a corrupt communist as your leader. People will actually be starving and trying to eat zoo animals while you sit on trillions of dollars in resources. Africa is another example. Europeans left behind farmland, trains, roads, and mines in Africa. What happened to it all? It's not that all of a sudden the Africans started running things like anti-colonialist activists had envisioned at the time. No. All the infrastructure fell into disrepair and or was stripped down and looted. They were literally handed fully functioning, completed supply chains for resource extraction and basically unlimited wealth, but they couldn't manage the simple upkeep. Now the defense for Africa might be that the Europeans didn't teach the Africans how to manage any of this. It's not the Africans' fault they couldn't run it independently. They were never trained. But my brother in Christ, the Europeans did try to train locals for management. Obviously, it would have been easier to have at least some locals in administration rather than having to import an entire workforce, but efforts to find African talent were largely unsuccessful. Don't believe me? Just look at the different outcomes in Hong Kong and Singapore when compared to Africa. In East Asia, Europeans often did work with locals in administrative and management capacities. When colonialism ended, Hong Kong and Singapore were able to manage themselves, not the case with Africa. Now, none of this is to say that colonialism is good. People have the right to self-rule and self-determination. However, the idea that colonialism and resources extraction are responsible for the developing world's ongoing poverty, that is quite simply a crock of shit. Elon said, hard truth. But someone responded to Lauren saying Europe extracted wealth, left debt traps, and drew borders borders that guarantee war, yet calls Africa broken. Starting a race miles behind with shackles on, stumbling isn't incompetence, it's physics. The miracle isn't that we struggle, it's that despite 400 years of theft, we still rise. Lauren quoted that saying, when Europe went to Africa, to be clear, they were already miles behind most of the world. Some areas didn't have written language or the wheel. You can't blame that on Europe. Under colonialism, Europeans actually brought Africa a little further ahead than it had been. They built infrastructure, including schools. They implemented modern agricultural and husbandry practices. And I won't deny that some practices of colonialism were inhumane, but you are also kidding yourself if you think pre-colonial Africa was some bastion of human rights. Case in point, many African nations now have rates of violence exponentially higher than they did under European rule. Now, I'm not trying to argue colonialism was good, as I have stated. People have the right to self-determination and self-governance. My issue, however, is the attempt to blame ongoing African poverty on Europe. Pragmatically, Europe's actual influence on Africa was to make Africans safer, better educated, and less impoverished than they had been before, and in some cases than they even are now. I know it's unpopular to say this nowadays, but you just can't blame the white man for all your problems. Elon said exactly. And he says this podcast is worth a listen. The greatest lie ever told. And this doctor says that European men named all of the continents. This is a reflection of their uniquely panoramic mind. The inhabitants of non-white civilizations, India, China, Africa, had no idea where they were located. Africa derives from Roman usage after their defeat of Carthage around 146 BC. The Romans applied it to their North African provinces, and over time European explorers, starting with the Portuguese in the 15th century, extended the name to the entire continent as they mapped it. Asia originates from the ancient Greek term Asia, used by Herodotus around 440 BC. It initially referred to Asia Minor and then the Persian Empire. As European exploration and scholarship grew, Asia was extended to encompass the vast landmass east of Europe. And the name Europe is linked to Greek mythology, with the term first appearing geographically in the 6th century BC to refer to lands west of Asia. And the Americans were named after Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian explorer who between 1499 and 1502 recognized that the lands discovered by Columbus were not part of Asia but a distinct new world. The name was proposed by a German cartographer in his 1507 map, Universalis Cosmographia, and they called Australia an unknown southern land. While James Cook claimed Eastern Australia for Britain in 1770, the name Australia was popularized later by Matthew Flinders in 1814. Elon said that naming based on Greek and Roman lore is incredibly widespread. And Travis says that the net lifetime economic contribution of everyone in the US except for white males is negative. The entirety of leftists' politics is seizing the economic surplus created by white men and handing it to their client demographics to buy votes to remain in power to seize. Han says beg to differ. Full-time employed Asian men and women out-earn white men by a wide margin per the latest data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the net contributors are the white men, and Asian women. And Snip says yes, but you are comparing Asians who were mostly selected via immigration for intelligence against all whites. Taking that into account, white performance is far more impressive. Han said, not disputing your point, but I'm pointing out that Asian men and women are net taxpayers, whereas he gives Asians no credit. Elon said a fair assessment. And Donald Trump says pregnant women don't use Tylenol unless absolutely necessary. Don't give Tylenol to your young child for virtually any reason. Break up the MMR shot into 3 totally separate shots. Take chicken pea shots separately. Take hepatitis B shot at 12 years old or older. And importantly, take vaccine in 5 separate medical visits. Elon said sensible advice. And Dan says every pound you lose takes 4 pounds of pressure off your knees and 6 pounds off your hips. A 5% reduction in body weight can result in a 50% reduction in joint pain. Many people think they have knee or hip issues when it's a weight issue. And Elon reposted that. And Wilfred Riley says that male sex offenders going to the women's jail is absolutely the most insane thing going on in society today. The sentencing judge, usually a woman, has to call the rapist she and say her penis, a ruling class designed by Monty Python, and Elon reposted that. And Jamie Reed said doctors are acting like they are God when it comes to medically transitioning children. She says the practices she witnessed were disturbing and dangerous. Elon reposted that as well. And the J.D. Vance home attacker has been identified as trans daughter of Democrat donor surgeon. Elon said those are not the eyes of a sane person. And Wesley quoted that, saying that we brainwashed hundreds of thousands of unstable young people to believe that chemically castrating and dismembering themselves is their only way to become their true selves and avoid suicide, and that anyone preventing them from inflicting the ultimate sexual violence on themselves is a Nazi who wants to kill the children he's protecting from the ultimate sexual violence. Of course they will threaten and commit violence. Elon said one of the greatest crimes in history. Andy said the violent man arrested over a hammer attack at the family home of Vice President J.D. Vance in Ohio is a trans leftist. William DeFoor comes from a well-to-do liberal family whose parents are doctors and donors to Democrats. The attack has echoes of the trans militant who tried to kill Justice Kavanaugh at his family home in Maryland. Christopher said we have a serious problem with trans terrorism in America. It must be stopped. Elon said big time. And the Peruvian accused of the murder of a 19-year-old in Milan had arrived in 2017 and had a string of convictions, including rape and robbery. Twice it had been impossible to deport him until he killed. Elon replied with 2 exclamation marks. And Michael says, isn't it ironic that many Brits voted for Brexit to reduce immigration? How did this happen? This is Britain annual net migration. And Elon reposted it. And Gary Tan says California is not okay. The Golden State added roughly 188,000 jobs in social assistance between June 2023 and June 2025, yet only 4,900 private sector jobs in total. He said there is a vast expansion of non-profit graft that doesn't serve the people it claims to help. Simultaneously to that, it's becoming harder than ever to conduct normal business and create new private sector jobs. Stop the grift. And Elon reposted it. And Paul Graham said a friend told me that now that they've had a child, her husband can't bear to watch movies in which bad things happen to kids. Same here. That was one of the most surprising things about having children. You are not just protective of your own children, but children in general. And Elon reposted that. And he also reposted the full 3-hour conversation with Peter Diamandis. Now it's time for our Grok Imagine slideshow of all the creations Elon reposted today. So, that's everything that Elon said today. He said he's not losing any sleep over the NVIDIA announcement for their autonomous vehicle framework that they are giving to companies to train. Mercedes says they have a vehicle coming out in the first quarter of this year that's going to be equipped with the hardware for level 2 driver assistance already installed. So we'll see how that pans out. Trump says he's pushing Congress to enact voter ID in all states in America. And we gotta look at some more fraud all across the country, especially in Minnesota. And if you guys want early access to these daily videos, you can gain access by joining this channel as a member. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.